Well, thank you so much for being here in this episode of Behind the Minds of Women in Business. And this is a series where we get together with women and we share insights and ideas and strategies that can work for other business owners and also encourage them to keep showing up online and keep showing for their business. And today I have with me Moriah Bacus. She is a project management manager, and an accountability coach, and she helps coaches and consultants get things done. And she's also the founder of Vibe High. So I don't know, Mariah, if you want to give us an introduction, a little bit more about your background and how do you help people.
So my background before I got into coaching was primarily in event management, and that's where I got a lot of my project management support or experience. After events, I moved into human resources, and I was in an HR role for about a year, and the pandemic hit. So then I was job searching, and nothing was happening for me. And that's how I decided to make the move into coaching after connecting with a coach who supported other coaches. So at first, I started out as a habits coach. So I was working with creative professionals, helping them overcome fear and procrastination, which are really common things we all deal with, so that they could get into action, breaking their old habits and building new healthy habits. And then a lot of my clients started asking for help just getting organized. And I had past experience as an executive assistant and, as you know, project manager. And so I started helping them with those types of projects, admin and organizing projects and things like that. That started taking off so quickly that I needed to bring in some virtual assistants to help me in my business. And then we launched a VA agency, so providing virtual admin support and creative projects. Well, I did that for about a year, but I started feeling burnt out again, just like I had in events. And there was so many clients and so many team members. It was just way too much. So I decided to scale back. And so now it's the version of my business that we have today. So I'm working with coaches and consultants in a specific way as a project manager and accountability coach. And I like to refer to my clients as visionaries. So they're not just doing their coaching job and then clocking out. They're doing things like writing books, or they're starting their own podcast series, or maybe they're launching a group coaching program. So they have these big dreams. And what I do is I help them take those dreams and put them into actual timelines and project plans with milestones and the small tasks in between that'll help us get from start to finish and complete that project. So that's one piece of it. The other part is then meeting with my clients consistently, sometimes as often as 4 days a week, so that they stay on track with the tasks that they've committed to. So that's the accountability piece. So I wear two hats in that I'm a project manager, so I provide guidance and direction, but I'm also coaching, where I'm asking questions. And where the coaching side comes into play is when maybe they're experiencing roadblocks, just like we all do. Maybe they're procrastinating because they don't know how to do that thing, or they've never done it before. They don't know how long it's going to take, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe it's something that they shouldn't be doing anyways. Maybe they can delegate it to a team member. So I help them talk through those things and then get the task back on track. So I'm really loving what I'm doing because the clients that I'm working with are inspiring and ambitious, and they're up to some really big things. And that means that my days are inspiring and fun, and I get to learn a lot from them as well.
I love that. I feel like we always learn from our clients in a way or another, right?
So much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So since you said like you first had your virtual assistant agency and everything, how was that for you? I'm hoping like you can offer some advice and like some insights on like sometimes businesses doesn't they don't work, or we feel like we start something and we feel like, oh, this is not going how I like it, or we feel defeated.
Mhm.
And I have heard stories about a lot like this, like the business first doesn't work and they start another one. So what advice can you give on like not feeling like you're defeated, or like, oh, this didn't work, I'm going to go to my bed, cry all night, and like I'm not gonna start something again. How was your process like in the way like to pick yourself back up?
That's a great question. Um, One of my life themes is trial and error. And I know it's not the same for everyone. So I'm used to that. I'm used to making mistakes and seeing how is this going to play out. So sometimes I'm treating things as a bit of an experiment, right? And so while that's something that's innate to me and the way that I operate, It's something that maybe I would suggest someone can try on, right? So try on that persona as someone who experiments with trial and error. And if we think about what they say about failing forward, and the most learning we get is from our failures. Like when we are successful with something, we tend to just check it off and move on. But when there's a failure, you get so much more data from that. So it's adopting this mindset of I'm allowed to experiment, I'm allowed to make mistakes. And in fact, it's good if I make mistakes because there's so much more learning in that. So it's that piece, but then also the picking yourself back up quickly. This is how quickly you can find the learning. So it's okay to give yourself time to acknowledge what happened and even be sad. We can experience those emotions, but there should be some sort of time constraint on it because we don't want to spend the rest of the whole day in bed and lose even more time, right? So I'm the kind of person where I will say, like, have compassion with yourself and allow yourself to process those emotions, because if something doesn't go right, we can experience disappointment, frustration. We're even maybe grieving the loss of a client or a relationship or something like that, and allow yourself to feel it for a set amount of time. But then the quicker you can switch to, like, what is the learning here? That's going to make it easier to pick yourself up and then apply that learning to the next thing. So it's not brushing it under the rug, or it's not like, oh, looking for a silver lining, but it's like, okay, what seriously is the learning here, and how can I apply it so that things will be different for me next time?
I feel like also like, as you say, identifying the things that went wrong. How can we make it better? And at the end of the day, all of these are like things we're learning, right? So being that said, for example, for your clients, like you're handling like some of their projects and like seeing the vision and everything, and you're also offering like the coaching side. Sometimes when we launch a program or a book or something like new, sometimes it takes time to pick up and like start seeing results. As the same on social media, I always tell like you're not gonna see results on like 1 month, like, or we have to create the community, we have to grow in there. So how do you handle like when your clients feel like, oh, this is not picking up, like what do we do? Like, how do you handle like their fear or their concerns?
I validate their feelings because, we're all human. And first of all, I feel fortunate that my clients would feel comfortable sharing those feelings and concerns with me, because that's being quite vulnerable, right? So I would validate those feelings. I would also point out examples of other people who have experienced other things. If you think about overnight success, we think it's an overnight success because this person just came out of nowhere and all of a sudden, wow, they're famous. But if you pull back the curtain, there is no overnight success, right? So it's avoiding comparison. And then the other thing I would say is, are we in action toward our goals? So are we controlling what we can actually control? Because how everyone else receives our project or our book, that's sometimes largely out of our control. If someone likes your book or not, that's their subjective opinion. But what can we control? We can control being in action towards our goals. So am I following the promotion schedule my book publisher recommended, right? Am I actually doing those things? Oh, I'm not getting new business in enough. Am I following the lead development plan my business coach laid out for me? If not, well, there's your answer, right? So it's a bit of not comparing ourselves to others and only focusing on what's within our control and making sure that our actions are aligned with our goals.
Going a little bit back here, can you tell us a little bit about what are your responsibilities and how do you handle your time? Because you're doing like your social media, your things, but you're also doing your clients. But I'm not sure if, for example, if one of your clients is launching a book, I'm pretty sure you're handling like maybe talking with their book publisher or their social media manager, like, hey, you need to get this thing done. Does that work like that for you? How do you handle like all this time managing with like clients?
Yeah, this is a perfect question for me because I'm all about time and energy management. So, yes, with my clients where I'm working with them ongoing or on specific projects, sometimes I'm going beyond just the task management and the planning. And if I'm able to, and I have the bandwidth or my team members can support, we help with some of the execution. So, I will share with you our process for how we organize our work. I don't use to-do lists. So I only use a project management tool. We work inside Asana. as well as my calendar for scheduling. These are the two big things I honestly could not live without. So anytime something new comes in, so if it's client work or it's an internal project, we're setting it up, first of all, in our project management tool. We're creating the work back dates, assigning the dates, and then I actually plan my time in my calendar on a weekly basis based off what's in the project management tool. So there's a combination of just general recurring time blocks in my calendar and some blank space. And so I'll perhaps on Friday or sometimes on the weekend, I'll go and I'll look at what's coming up and I'll actually insert those tasks as time blocks into my calendar. So I'm not working off a to-do list. What happens after client calls? Maybe there's some action items, or I have a networking call and I want to send someone a resource I mentioned. I'll have these notes written down, but I have a task at the end of the day that says like call wrap up or day wrap up or something, right? At that point, anything that needs to go into Asana will go into Asana. Let's say it's something quick I can knock out, I take care of it right away. Or maybe it's something it just needs to be a 15-minute task on my calendar. So that's how I manage it. And then from a external request perspective, I have my calendar booking tool set up in a way that works for me. So gradually over time, I started limiting the amount of time and the days per week that I would do networking and discovery calls, because I wanted to be able to like channel that energy and stay in that kind of energy for one whole day and not have it fragmented through the week. As you know, we need one type of energy for deep work, maybe for creative writing, one type of energy for networking calls, another type of energy maybe for working on our admin tasks, right? So I really wanted to get organized with that. And at first I was nervous that some of the people would push back and not like the fact that I was only offering Wednesdays and Thursdays for calls. So what I would say is, here's my call booking link. I'm doing an experiment with Wednesdays and Thursdays for my calls. Hopefully something works here for you, but if not, just share some dates and times with me and we'll go from there. But it was okay. And to this day, it's been okay. And everyone usually finds a time.
What would you say? Like, I think we can think about it from where you started your first business with the virtual assistant. How was your process, like thinking it like in a social media way? Because some people usually, when they start as a coach, they already have referrals and they're like probably not thinking too much in going into social media, or they probably just go into Instagram and then they start growing. So how was your process? Like, how did you, well, did you first started only thinking LinkedIn, or you first started like with another one?
When I was doing habits coaching, I actually didn't have an Instagram profile up until that point. So up until late 2020 or the beginning of 2021 was the first time I got an Instagram account. And that's because I was targeting creatives who are more likely on Instagram than they are on LinkedIn. For a period of time, I actually wanted to specifically work with folks in the music industry, so event professionals, musicians, DJs, and that sort of thing. Because of my background in events and working in nightclubs a long time ago, I had tons of those people in my Facebook community. So I actually started a Facebook group. And I had over 100 members in there, and there we were posting things related to habits. If you think about it, it was near the beginning of the pandemic. And so most of those people who were working in events or in music were out of work and at home. And then, of course, getting into like maybe overeating or drinking too much and these sorts of things that everyone was dealing with, right? So I thought this is a great opportunity. So I did that for some time. But again, as the business needs shifted, I decided to sunset that group and then shift more into working primarily on LinkedIn. So now LinkedIn is my primary platform, and I do share content on Instagram and engage with some of my clients on Instagram. So for example, if their primary platform is Instagram, I want to be able to support their content, right? So I'll engage with them there. I can't remember a lot of the particulars around how I managed social media back then. I know that my coach at the time, who is now my client, Rob Gilbert, I had an interesting story to share about my past that had never been made public. And it was related to bad habits that I had and how I was able to break them. And he encouraged me to tell my story publicly on social media. Now, I was an introvert. I was also very, very nervous I cared a lot about what people thought of me and being judged. And now I'm working for myself, but I had a business in the past and I also had all these other jobs. And what were my old clients and what were my former employers and what were all of these people from my past going to think about me? It was a big hurdle for me to overcome, but with my coach's support, I made a decision. And I was invited to share my story in an interview similar to this in a group of 7,500 people on Facebook with a similar background as mine. And I told my story there, and it was recorded and it was shared. And it was that step that was the snowball effect for getting more comfortable being authentic, being myself, sharing about my past experience. And so that's kind of how I started. And now that the business has moved away from more of that habits focus, and then, we did creative projects. And I'm also working with my content in a way where sometimes it allows me to get to know people better. So one thing that I do is I have interviews similar as this called Vibe High with the Experts, where I interview other coaches and consultants that are in my coaching circles, maybe they're clients of mine, and bringing their story to life. And we talk about, their tips for starting growing and building this coaching business. And I think that's helpful for others. We also started a series of DJ mix sets, so an hour and a half long of music for focus and inspiration. And we've already released 3 editions of that so far. And so people are using that in their deep work sessions when they're trying to focus on getting things done and that sort of thing. And so and I have this background working in music. And so it's kind of this incorporating my personal interests and bringing them into this sort of format.
I love what you said about like being shy, like to share your story on camera and what other people think. And we all go through that. I feel like I also went through that. For you, like some advice or like what made you like say like, I don't care what people think, I'm going to go all in?
First, I'll say that LinkedIn is an extremely supportive platform. If you found a troll on there, it would be few and far between, right? It's not like the experience we might have on other social media platforms. So I would say for anyone who's hesitant about joining, know that you are joining a supportive community who will be there for you, and you can build some great relationships there. I still get nervous sometimes about what I'm going to share. Like, I'm not perfect. It's still a work in progress. I think the idea is to sit with it and think about, how does this tie back to my work? How will this be helpful for my clients or my potential clients? And knowing that the experience that you're sharing in being vulnerable, in being authentic, while it might be hard in that moment, knowing that that could be the difference in someone else feeling comfortable enough to reach out and get support. It's just a matter of finding a bit of courage inside ourselves and knowing that my ability and my opportunity to help others is more important than this fear I have right now.
What does your process of like regarding like clients on LinkedIn or like getting seen on LinkedIn and like getting your calendar book, like what are some strategies that you use?
There needs to be a bit of a checklist that you would follow every day. So I would suggest setting it up like a habit tracker with, these are the activities I'll do on LinkedIn every day. So you always want to be sending new connection requests. And right now, if you don't have a paid profile, you're limited to the number of connection requests you can send with a personalized message. Sending a personalized message is always going to be key. Why are you connecting with this person, right? So we always want to be developing our existing network, but continuing to grow it and bringing new people into our network. So maybe setting a goal for yourself of sending 5 new connection requests each day, right? With some sort of meaningful note, if you're able to include it. Then once they accept, start a conversation. Don't just let them accept and then they just sit there and what now, right? So something I like to do, which is something I'm genuinely interested in, because I don't like sending templated messages. If I'm either I accept a request or I'm going to send something out, I usually want to look at their profile and find something that I find interesting and compliment them on it or comment on it, something we have in common. Maybe we both come from this HR background. One of my current clients, I'll tell you this story, how we connected. I sent him a connection request. I read through his about section. I noticed at the very end, he talked about his turntables and he was starting to collect records. I thought, oh, cool, right? So I said, hey, like, what records do you have in your collection already? And so the first conversation wasn't even about anything business related. It was just on a shared personal interest in music. So we started talking about that. I shared with him a music documentary that had been filmed in Toronto that he might be interested in. So that was what the exchange was. And then he came to one of my workshops, and then he asked about my services, and now we're working together, right? So I would say starting genuine conversations. I like to ask people, what's new, exciting, or challenging for you right now? And I find that often opens up some amazing conversations. They're going to tell me about a new service or a program they're launching, or maybe a current challenge that they're facing. So this has been really good because I might be able to refer someone to them, or now I can support their content, or maybe give them some resources that will help them. Or maybe if they have a challenge they're experiencing, I can offer to help for free. So I will say to them, hey, if you'd like to bounce around some ideas, or if you want to talk through some of this with someone, let me know. I'm always here for a friendly listening ear. It's a no obligation call. So we get on the call, we talk through the thing, and maybe they go away and we never talk again. Or maybe they follow up with me and say, like, hey, what does it look like working with you? But at the very least, I've built a new connection, I've built a new relationship, and I've actually provided value. So I think it's sending the requests, having genuine conversations, that sort of thing. Send a message of gratitude. If someone posts about something that you found inspiring or enlightening, yes, comment on it, but also send them a message of thanks. So, people appreciate that too. If you think about it, we're all out here slaving away over our post, worrying if someone's going to like it. Am I going to get the likes? Are people going to comment? What's the algorithm going to do? So if someone reaches out to you and expresses that your content made a difference, I think that's a meaningful thing too. LinkedIn is a social media platform, not a broadcast media platform, meaning it goes two ways. So we can't just post and think, oh my gosh, my content is so great, everyone's going to come now. No, we have to go and engage. We get to go engage with other people's content, because if we're not doing that, the algorithm is not going to show our content to anyone. And that's something I feel like a lot of people still don't realize, because I end up talking about it quite a lot with folks. What that looks like, depending on the size of your network, might be 15 to 30 minutes a day of scrolling the feed, commenting on people's posts, or using a far more specific method. And I will name drop David Young. He's a newer LinkedIn contact of mine. He has a really great done for you content creation and engagement strategy package. But the thing I learned about him from him is how to create saved searches in LinkedIn with all of the people that you would like to engage with their posts, and revisiting those searches so that you can target those people. Or the low tech way is create a bookmark folder on your browser bar with the direct links to the LinkedIn profiles of all of the people you would like to be engaging with, and then periodically making sure that you're in a timely way engaging with their content. Every time anyone engaged with your post, it puts it back in the feed. So one trick is, let's say you post and you get 2 comments. So you can reply to the comments, but wait about an hour and then come back and then like the comments. So it creates 2 separate engagements and it puts it back into the feed a second time. That's just a bit of a LinkedIn trick.
Give back, because they're also giving back to you, and as we say, LinkedIn is very a supportive community.
It's a great point. So like maybe half the people are people that they're dream clients, the other half are people that engage with your stuff. So
Yeah,
it's reciprocal, right? That's a
yeah,
great
that's
idea. Yeah.
yeah. So a question for you. This is might be a pretty simple one, but just out of curiosity. So I was talking with some people and they say, I don't know if you have also encountered this, but they say usually their clients are people who don't engage with their LinkedIn content, who don't like their LinkedIn content, who don't comment. And like it's just someone who sees their content and says like, hey, I like what you've been sharing. Like I like your services. And I find it like really true, because it had also happens to me. These people don't engage a lot with my content, and it is because, right, maybe I'm posting on your post and you're posting on my post, but we know each other or we made a little connection. But sometimes like the real clients, they're the ones who don't engage in it. They're very silent.
Yeah, we call those the lurkers, because they're just lurking. But
Yeah.
it's interesting, and I've noticed this often applies depending on the type of coaching you do. So let's say you're talking about there's alcohol-free coaches. That
Mhm.
can be a sensitive topic.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
people might be hesitant to engage with that coach's content because, oh, are people going to think that I have an alcohol problem now? So if you think about it, some coaches who are dealing with more sensitive topics, maybe a divorce coach, right? Someone who deals with addictions, like those sorts of things, people might be more hesitant because, as you know, everyone can see what you're doing on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something to keep in mind. So many times I have had my mind blown. Someone says, "Oh my gosh, I've been following your content for a year." I'm like, "You never engaged with anything." But
Exactly.
okay. It's like you kind of wish they would, but at the same time, the whole point is that they're getting the content and you're building this connection with them. And through your content and what you're sharing, they are learning to know you and like you and trust you. If you're concerned that your content isn't getting a lot of interaction, know that there are people out there who are reading and watching. And some people just don't ever hit that like button. It's just not in their DNA to do it. So we
True.
can't do anything about it.
Have you actually attracted clients through LinkedIn, or do you use more referrals or a community based?
From the beginning, I relied heavily on referrals and word of mouth. And I think a lot of us do.
Mhm.
And we're obviously quite lucky and blessed if we do get great referrals, because that means our current clients are happy, right?
Mhm.
But usually it's not enough to feed the pipeline and make sure that we have enough business. One thing that I have found success with, besides the methods I talked to you about, everything we're doing on LinkedIn in terms of engagement and lead development, is hosting workshops. Because again, for me, I don't always turn up on video. And so a workshop is a way for me to be on video and people get more of a sense of my energy. Will they like me? Will they like working with me? Do I know my stuff? Things like that. And I think that comes through really clearly on a workshop. So anytime I connect with even like a newer coach who's asking these types of questions, if they're an introvert like me, I will always suggest that they share their expertise and their subject matter knowledge on a workshop, because when you're just recording yourself for a reel, it's like you're by yourself. There's no engagement. There's no one to like feed off their energy. How is this landing? But when you're in a workshop, you get the benefit of seeing the audience, being able to get some real time feedback. And I think it just brings the person to life more. Another similar opportunity is partnering with someone in something like this kind of dialogue, right? So if you have an opportunity to have an interview or a LinkedIn Live, or maybe co-host like some sort of workshop with someone, then again, you have someone to like riff off of and like have a conversation with, which makes it a lot more approachable. So I think workshops have been a really great thing for me too. Join the communities that are out there. So a great one is Changing Work community, full of great coaches and consultants. There's the BIPOC Coaches Collective. I recently did a coaches community roundup blog that actually details these three communities, including the one I'm a part of. So I like the idea of communities because they're providing a container for education and networking, but in there, often opportunities are shared. So, for example, like people will often post in the growth habit community, "Oh, my client is looking for a coach who can help them with this," something very specific. And so, right away, we can give referrals.
And there's a lot also problems in LinkedIn with hard selling in a way that instead of sending like, as you build the connection, you go through their profile, people are just like sometimes in like the connection message, they're selling already, right? They're like, hey, I do this is my service. And a lot of people hate that.
Absolutely. I think most people hate it. So
Every-
um, we call it pitch slapping.
Yeah.
So, and like, I think my biggest pet peeve is when someone starts asking me about my revenue and it's the second message they've just sent me. It's like, I don't even know you and you're asking me about information about my business. Like, I'm not going to tell some random stranger this. So that's like my first thought. I actually replied to someone the other day and I said, "Wow, this feels like jumping to making out and you haven't even asked me on a date yet." Because that's what it feels like. It's too much too soon. And I don't like being sold to in the DMs because it's templated, cold approach. They haven't taken any time to get to know me. They're often making assumptions about me. I like to offer a call when I feel like it's a natural point in the conversation. So like, let's say we feel like, even if it's for a networking call, we exchange a few messages back and forth like you and I did. And I was like, hey, like, we really get along here. We have some things in common. We have some things that we could talk about. Let's
Yeah.
get on a call and get to know each other more and learn about each other's businesses. I don't focus on closing. I don't want to close for the sake of closing, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm the right fit for this client. So when I think about that, I'm thinking about, are we aligned on values? Does this person value integrity and collaboration and inspiration and ambition like I do? Is the client clear on what I can offer? Or are they projecting onto me like I'm going to solve all their problems? That happens too, right? Right? Or maybe they've been referred and the person that referred them had painted this picture, right? So now hopefully they have clarity, and I don't want people to feel rushed or pressured. That's not any sort of way to start a relationship. It closes if it's meant to close. And if
Yeah.
it's not, that's okay. And that ends up with me working with clients that are aligned and I get to work with for a longer period of time, not someone where it's going to just blow up and be over very quickly, because that's a lot of invested resources. If you notice a client pushes back on your discovery process or your onboarding process, that's a red flag. Because if they question, why do we have to have a second call? Can't we just do this? They question that. If you send them an onboarding email and they ignore it or they don't complete those items, is this how it's going to be? Guess what? Yes, that's how it's going to be for the rest of the time. So those are kind of the red flags where you could say, let me take a step back. Do I really want to work with this client? And just, I would say, address things early on and just professionally have that conversation. Like, this isn't working for me. This is how I work. And this is why. Will we be able to work this way together going forward? And give them an opportunity to adjust. But at the end of the day, you can only give so many chances. And your time is better spent with a client who's like 100% ready and willing to work with you and get the results that you promise, right? And you can only give those results
Yeah.
if they're following the process that has worked for others,
Yeah.
right? So
That's true.
yeah, it's just trying to address it as early on as possible and not let it go on for so long, because it gets harder to have the conversation as time goes on.
Yeah. Definitely. I feel like someone has to be like also ready.
Yeah,
So you can also give them the best of yourself. So
exactly.
to wrap it up, I wanted to ask you like what are three advice that you can give coaches, founders, and business owners like regarding like to personal branding, social media, or showing up in their business, like not getting discouraged, like, any like business related advice that you can give?
I wrote down be authentic, because I think if you pretend to be someone you're not, then it's not like what you want to do is that what you see is what you get. So there's no surprises. You should look like your LinkedIn picture, for example. When the person meets with you on the call, the same way you talk, your energy, it should be the same person they get on the call. And I think that's the best way to attract your dream clients. If you're out there being 100% authentic, they're going to be like, oh, that's the person for me, right? If you're not authentic, if you're pretending to be something you're not, you're going to attract the wrong clients and you're going to be a mismatch at the core level. So I would say focus on authenticity and practice flexing that muscle. So your very first post isn't going to be the most authentic, vulnerable post ever, but gradually start being more of yourself, interspersing more of yourself into your content and what you share. The second thing I would say is be consistent. So develop a habit around these things. The thing that most coaches and consultants that I work with tend to procrastinate on is business development. And guess what? It's like the most important thing because it's a revenue generating activity. So create consistency by scheduling it into your calendar for the same time every day. Because if we're doing that habit, let's say in our office at the same time every day, it's the time and place that solidifies the habit. So if you get consistent, these things become easier. You just sit down at that time and do that thing because that's what you do. And then you get better and better at it. The third thing I would say is provide value. So the focus is on giving, right? And if you give, you will receive, but you need to be giving and focusing on giving and not worried about what's in it for me and when am I going to book a call and da da da. If you focus on delivering value, that will go a really long way. So that's offering to help for free when you can. So yeah, sure. I had a 30-minute call with someone today where I helped them build a perfect day schedule. I don't know if I'll work with him again, but he needed some support in that moment, and I was happy to give that support. From calls where I gave time for free, I have received LinkedIn recommendations. You know how far that goes in terms of social proof, right? So provide value. In your posts, provide value. In your newsletter, provide value. When you're on networking calls, provide value. Ask, what can I do for you? What are some resources I can help you with? So always be thinking about what you can be giving rather than what you're receiving.
That's true. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.